small things can make massive, unexpected impacts elsewhere. That is the definition of the butterfly effect. The idea that often unimportant, unrelated actions or events can have devastating consequences much later on. Another way you can look at the butterfly effect is, what if? What if you went back in time and changed something small? That little change could start a massive ripple effect that could change everything in the present and future in an absolutely crazy way. Here's a real life example. All the way back in September 1928, a scientist went on holiday. When he returned a month later to his lab, he realized that all his petri dishes have been ruined with a load of bacteria. He was in the middle of throwing them away when he noticed one petri dish had significantly less bacteria on it. Curious about this, he studied that petri dish. He wanted to know exactly what was on it that stopped that bacteria growth. And on that day, Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin, the world's most used antibiotic. So here's the crazy bit. If Alexander Fleming never went on holiday, or even if he threw his dishes away way too fast for him to realise, he might not have ever discovered penicillin. How many people could have died as a result? So now you have an idea of what the butterfly effect is. Let's look at the times the butterfly effect has been in play at the Pokemon TCG. The 4th of November 2016, Liverpool, England. Mega Gardevoir EX from Steam Siege was touted to be the most played deck at the up and coming Liverpool regionals that weekend. Luke Kirkham and Tamara Cameron were going to play in Liverpool that weekend, and on Friday night after work they packed up their cards and set off on the 2-hour card journey. They were both set on what they wanted to play. However, on the drive up they were discussing the idea of a rogue pet deck, Mega Scissor EX. A deck that no one else had really played. Mega Scissor for 2 energy with Oko Gardevoir EX, and provided enough disruption to win some games against the other big decks of the format. However, they quickly dismissed it due to the Dark Dragons matchup being pretty unwinnable. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a lorry crashed into Luke's car, smashing the windows and throwing them all the way onto the grassy verge next to the motorway. Luckily, no one was hurt at all, and the police towed them to the nearest service station. When they were there, they contacted a friend who was also going to play in Liverpool to pick them up. However, he was stuck in traffic much further behind. With this free time, they decided to revisit Scissor and try and work out a better list. 4 Silent Labs to cover Dark Dragons and a 1-1 Golbat line to allow Mega Scissor to Oko Fright Night Yveltal proved crazy strong, and Scissor absolutely decimated every game they played in that service station. From there, Luke and Tamara were locked in 100% committed to Mega Scissor. They even convinced their friend Alex, who picked them up, to play it too. Luke and Alex both made top 8 at Liverpool, and Tamara would have done so as well had it not been for an unfortunate decklist error discovered in the last round of Swiss. And Luke thinks if he hit a Spirit Link earlier in his top 8 game, he definitely would have been able to win Liverpool, as his top 4 and finals match would have both been against Mega Gardevoir. So here's the crazy part. If that lorry had never crashed into their car, they wouldn't have had the extra time to test Scissor. And if it wasn't for that extra time, they might not have been able to work out the best list for Scissor. And they might not have even played it at all, potentially losing out on their top 8 placements, and never giving the community a new archetype to play. Strange stuff. This next one isn't as dramatic as a car crash, but it's still just as crazy to think about. All the way back in the summer of 2019, I had planned to go to a day festival, but I had to miss it due to illness. I was very sad. One of the music acts I was most excited to see was Nick Fansuli. So to cheer my mood up, I listened to one of his 2018 Boiler Room mixes, and I heard this absolute banger. It's called Wish, and the main chorus goes like this. And I fell in love with it instantly. It became one of my favourite songs. So much so, I started to play Jirachi Prism in ADP just because of Jirachi's ability name called Wish Upon a Star. Up until that point, Jirachi Prism had seen 0 play. Sure, its effect was really strong, however there was no way to put it in your prize card, so most of the time it was just a dead card in your deck. I put it into ADP for extra shenanigans and it wasn't very good. However, when Detective Pikachu came out, it actually became very easy to use. Because in Detective Pikachu there was a Mr. Mime, and that Mr. Mime in combination with Oranguru allows you to get the Jirachi Prism into the prizes very easily. And I was really quick to put together that maybe you could play Zacian V as a standalone deck without ADP and use the Jirachi package to get the extra prize card auto creation would have gave you, and allow you to be a lot more aggressive in the early game. And it turned out to be really good. So good in fact that some big name players like Azul and Stefan actually noticed and began to refine the idea. So much so it became a tier 1 archetype, and Azul took it to third place in the Limitless Invitational, which was one of the biggest, most prestigious events of the year. It even got first and second in the 4th Limitless qualifier as well. So here's the crazy thing though, had I not been ill that summer, I might never have stumbled onto that Nick Fansuli mix, which means I might not have heard that Wish song, which means I wouldn't have liked Jirachi Prism so much, which means Combozation might not have ever been born. A tier 1 deck made from me missing a music festival. How insane is that? This next one, however, could be considered as some sort of spiritual or even divine intervention. Nick Moffat was looking at the Brisbane Regionals results to help him prepare his deck for the up and coming Salt Lake City Regionals. And the 4th place deck Arc Bird really caught his eye, so he began to test it. Funnily enough, he didn't own any of the cards at the time, so he wrote down 60 card names on some flashcards. And he noticed that while the deck was good, it kinda struggled with other Arceus decks and Gengar VMAX. So he retired it, not thinking much of it, and went to bed. However, that night, Arceus himself was not going to let Nick ditch the idea that fast, and Nick actually had a dream of adding Cape of Toughness and Zapdos V to the deck. These would help shore up Arceus and the Gengar matchup so much. He immediately leapt out of bed and made the changes to the deck and started testing it, and it worked so well. So well in fact, him and Ian Robb got top 4 and top 8 respectively at Salt Lake City. It doesn't quite stop there though, because Ian went forward and adapted the list a little bit more, and he actually ended up winning Indianapolis with that deck. So a dream helped build a regional champion, a top 4 and a top 8 deck. Madness. This last one has to deal with a Pokemon official product malfunctioning, TCGO itself. In the Astral Radiance format, Reggie's was a low-key threat. Tablemon even took it to a 17th place finish at the World Championship, and Zapdos TCG top 8'd Bilbao with it as well. And Reggie's was set to get even better in the Lost Origin meta because of gift energy, which would allow the Reggie's player to constantly refill their hand up to 7 with Ancient Wisdom flinging gift energy back into play. Reggie's was set to have a massive buff and maybe even be a top tier contender. However, disaster. Gift energy was bugged on TCGO, which means you couldn't play the card at all. This meant that people couldn't test Reggie's to its fullest potential online, and because of this, player numbers fell and it quickly fell off the radar, meaning people wasn't considering it much for the up and coming Salt Lake City Regionals. However, Azul and his testing group, they tested Reggie's and they stumbled on how bonkers it was in this new meta, and they decided to play it along with Caleb Gardner, Grant Manley and Drew Kennett, who all went on to make top 8 at Salt Lake City. Azul even made top 4. But here's the funny bit. If gift energy worked as it was meant to on TCGO, would Reggie's power level have been more obvious? If people could have played it to its fullest potential online, I'm sure it would have been on more people's radars. And if it was on more people's radars, would people have teched for Reggie's in Salt Lake City? And if more people teched for Reggie's, would they have been as successful? Did a faulty Pokemon product inadvertently change the course of a Pokemon regional championship? I will leave that up to you to decide.